While I was in Japan, I picked up a set of POSCA markers that I've been wanting to try. If you're curious about my full Japan art haul, I've linked that video in the description. Recently, I had a cozy drawing date with friends at a cafe, and it felt like the perfect time to test these markers for the first time. Let's see how they performed.
Cute. I want to get more. I love POSCAs. They're so satisfying.
These were like 1900 yen. Do you have any tips?
Tips?
Just use them.
It's just a opaque paint pen. Just yeah, it's like any pen that you have to like shake and blow or whatever. Just don't press too long or it'll make it flow. That's all. Or if it's not flowing, just go beep beep beep.
I feel like every time I use like a new medium, I get anxious. I'm like, I don't know how to use this properly.
Every time I have to draw on paper, I get anxious.
Yeah. Really? I know, sometimes when I like draw on paper, I just want to like zoom in.
Yeah,
or like
undo.
But you can't.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit.
Well,
Get the ink out and, like, try hard. Yeah.
Just like sploots.
Yeah. But once you use it, it should be okay. Like, yeah.
I'm so scared to use this one.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good, nice face.
Well, so that's my first impression of the markers. According to Licha, who has used these before, excess paint will come out the first time you use them, but it'll become more manageable after that initial gush of paint comes out. I didn't know how much paint would actually come out the first time, so as you can see, there's quite a bit of the purple left even after wiping it away. As I used the other colors, I was able to get a feel of how much pressure I should put on the tip of the marker to get the right amount of paint to come out. But no matter how careful you are, you will get a pool of paint, so be mindful of that. Before I actually color anything, I wanted to try how the paints layer on top of each other. I've heard that these markers are pretty opaque, but you never know how the lighter colors will sit on top of darker colors. Overall, the colors are very opaque, especially once dried down. Even the lighter colors showed up pretty okay against the darker colors. Once the first layer dries, if you put another layer on, I think you'll get even more opaque colors. Alright, let's jump into using these markers. The idea of working straight onto a blank page without a sketch felt a bit intimidating at first, so I started with some pencil guidelines. However, I ended up erasing them entirely because A, I didn't want any pencil marks to show, and B, I reminded myself that the goal here was to fully explore and test the markers on their own. That said, I'm glad I experimented with the pencil first because I discovered something new. The paint didn't go on as smoothly in areas where I had erased. This probably depends on what type of paper you use, but for reference, I used Ohuhu 200 GSM marker pad. For the next painting, I added a light sketch as a subtle guideline beneath the marker work. This gave me just enough structure to stay on track without the sketch overpowering the final piece. With that approach in place, let's dive into the process of my second attempt. Hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone, I am back home from the cafe. My friends left, so these are some of the quick drawings that I attempted with the POSCA markers, and I feel like I am getting the feel of how they work. I am ready to try something a little bit more involved, a little bit bigger, so let's get started. I started out with the light pencil guideline again. I find this to be very helpful as it calms my anxiety about putting something permanent down on a blank page. Once I build my confidence with these markers, I'll be more comfortable using them alone with no pencil sketch underneath. Filling in big areas feels a bit tedious, but it's quite an important step. You have to make sure to apply the paint as evenly as possible so it doesn't overlap and create a bumpy texture when it dries. This exercise was all about trusting the process, as everything only starts to take shape once each layer is in place. At first, it might be hard to see where it's going, and honestly, I felt the same way. Even though I had a vision for the final result, I kept doubting myself throughout because this was such a new experience. I wasn't sure if I was heading in the right direction, but I kept reminding myself that that's the point of experimenting with new materials. It's about facing the uncertainty, trusting the process, and being open to whatever outcome you create. And at the end of the day, it's just a page on my sketchbook, so no big deal. To wrap up my thoughts on the POSCA markers, I've broken them down into a few key categories. Affordability. I'd rate these markers at mid-range in terms of affordability. A set of 7 costs about 25 Canadian dollars, which is reasonable though not the cheapest option. If you're just exploring paint markers as a medium, there are more budget-friendly brands available to try first. User-friendliness. These markers are pretty easy to use since the paint flows directly from the pen and they are not designed for blending or mixing. However, you may encounter issues like excessive pooling or uneven application. Artistic style. The markers I use lend themselves to bold, graphic styles rather than intricate details. Controlling the paint flow can be tricky, and the dried finish often has a textured, chunky surface. While this works beautifully for rougher, expressive styles, it may not suit those who prefer fine details like me. That said, finer tip options are available if you want to explore more detailed work. Overall, POSCA markers offer a fun way to experiment with paint in pen form, especially if you enjoy bold color blocking or a more graphic approach to art. If you have used these markers before, please let me know in the comments if you have any tips or what your experience with them was like. See you in the next video.